Welcome back to the Jessica Wetz Show. This is a part 5 of our series, Conversations with a Counselor. I'm here today with the Executive Director of Strength Counselling Services here in Canada, Amanda Dewal. Thank you for being here with me today, Amanda.
Jess, I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited to get in today because last time we talked about my self-sabotage and stuff, but today we're going to primarily get on my passions.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's really important for people to plug into what means something to them so they can have this meaningful life, a life that has depth to it. Oftentimes, we just walk around the world like zombies. We're just like day in, day out. It's the same shit over and over and over again. So, what do we need to look at for you to not have to do the same shit every day? What do we need to look at for you to feel like when you wake up in the morning, you have something to look forward to? You have a life to be proud of. What does that mean to you? Because I think you have been spending a long time, I don't know how long, maybe your whole life, living in such a way where you're behaving because you think you have to behave that way. And the reason I came to this last session was because you were talking about how when people were proud of you, like your mom was like, oh, great job. Like, you're so great for going to treatment. You're like, what the fuck is wrong with all of you people? Like, I went to treatment. It's like I chose treatment over death. And that's still, that's amazing that you did that. But for you, you didn't feel like that was amazing.
Yeah.
So what I want to hone in with you is, what would you feel amazing about? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is interesting because that also plays into like me being nicer to myself too, because even the things that I do really enjoy or that I think I'm good at and I get fulfillment out, I can still like be hard on myself about. But I am excited to focus on that because I spend too much time being like, I suck, everything sucks, da 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 da. But there are a lot of things that I'm passionate and excited about, and I want to start doing that more and making that my life, because I can do whatever the hell I want. Why am I sitting here thinking about the shit that I hate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so we're stepping away from that self-defeating or self-sabotaging behavior. Just like you said, before we officially got started today, you were saying like, I'm getting tired of it.
Yeah.
Getting tired of like paying the consequences of all these choices that I'm making that are not good for me. I'm getting tired of it. And that tells me that you are healing. Right? Because if you were saying to me, oh, well, I'll just continue to face all these consequences and it's really no big deal, and you had no motivation to get away from that, I would say that you're still in the same place when we started. But we haven't been going that long. This is session 5, and you're like, I am tired of this. I'm like, great. I'm so glad you're tired of it, because now you're going to have the motivation to do something different and not make that same series of decisions or mistakes that you have been making. Right? So I'm curious, let's just start with just the basics of, to you, what's the difference between surface and depth? What does that mean to you as far as living?
Well, my first thought was neurotypical versus neurodivergent.
Okay, tell me more about it.
Like when I think of surface level, I just think of like the stuff society tells you to do, the mundane small talk routine of it all. And depth is the things that like invigorate me, that I love to talk about, that for so long other people didn't get. But now I've found a huge community of people online who have those same like interests and passions in me, because coincidentally we're all neurodivergent. And that provides me a lot of fulfillment.
Okay, that's awesome. I think that the world is tailored, unfortunately, toward normal. And it's like, what the fuck is normal? Like, people are so different, and everybody wants to seem like, right? The world tries to put us in this box. Oh, like, you're normal if you're X, Y, and Z. And it's like, so this idea of neurodivergence is beautiful, that this is coming more to the forefront and we're talking about it more. But the reality is neurodivergence is not a new thing.
No.
The world is starting to pay attention to neurodivergence, but It's always been there. But these people have not had the attention that they deserve. And they're put in these boxes. And then when they don't accommodate to the way the world wants them to be, then they're rejected. Or something as simple as on a school ground, a play yard or whatever. And if you're not like the other kids, well, then you're going to be rejected by your playmates. And we see this as we grow into adults. And then we see this in work situations where people are bullied. Like, it's pretty horrible, right?
Yeah.
And so I think my impression of you, from what I know about you so far, is that you've lived this life where you allow the world to put you in these boxes, and then you behave the way you think you need to be able to fit into that box in some ways. But then you have this channel, this social media presence, where you're like, fuck all you guys, I'm going to do whatever, right? And you've made a real name for yourself in that channel. But out here in the world, I wonder about how much you're still allowing the world to put you in that box. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that.
I don't even really go out in the real world. Like, I very rarely leave my house, go in public, any of that. And when I do, it's a super stressful experience for me because I'm thinking, is my face in the right position? How, like, do I look mean? Am I making someone uncomfortable? Is everything okay here? Like, trying to, and that's what a lot of it is. I want to make everybody else feel comfortable with my presence.
So this is fascinating, Jess, because what's the difference for you for being out in the world and trying to make people feel comfortable with your presence, and then being exactly unapologetically who you are in your social media presence? Because they're very different.
Yeah, I think it's just the consequence of constantly being told my whole life, like, you're too weird, you're too loud, you have resting bitch face. Like, just always hearing everyone else is like concerned. So for me, it was just easier to like, okay, let me do whatever I can do to like slide under the radar here and not have anybody looking in my direction, kind of thing. But when I'm online, I can just be myself. And I'm like, look my direction.
And as far as I understand, you have quite a following. You have a lot of people who look up to you, who idolize you in some ways. And I wonder if that has, and I think the answer is going to be no, but I wonder if that's given you any boost in your confidence to being out in public and in the real world and not pleasing people the way you have spent your life doing.
Well, I think learning that so many neurodivergent people experience the same thing. Like, I wasn't aware that it's a very neurodivergent experience to constantly be super conscious of your facial expressions and being like, okay, do I look like what everyone else looks like? Because I'm constantly getting comments about it. So now that I hear from other people saying like, yeah, I'm going and just being myself and like not putting on the mask of trying to like hide what's different about you, and I see that everybody else is doing this, one thing I've been focusing now when I'm in public is not thinking about my face, like not caring that this is my resting face. And people may think I am absolutely pissed, but like, I'm not. And I've learned that so many other neurodivergent people have this exact same experience, and it's not just me. And if they're not doing it anymore, why the fuck should I?
Right? Yeah. we want to be proud of our, go ahead.
We're all in collective agreement that like this is not the vibe anymore.
Yeah.
But I also go on.
My take would be like, be proud of your resting bitch face. Right? Like it actually doesn't, I hate to say it this way, it's so cliche, but it doesn't actually matter what anybody thinks of you, and it's none of your damn business anyway.
But the problem is I'm the one who like internal or created that almost, because I used to dance, and the senior dancers, the high school girls, I found them so intimidating, so unapproachable, and they scared me. And I never wanted to be like that. I always wanted to be perceived as like approachable and comfortable. I wanted everyone to feel safe with me, everyone feel like they could confide in me, and that like if they needed, I wanted to be everyone to feel comfortable around me because other people made me feel uncomfortable. So it's kind of hard for me to get over that and to think, okay, there's people who are going to interpret that, who are going to think I'm unapproachable and unfriendly and maybe angry, but that's okay. Because it's not everybody's job to make everyone around them feel like they're in a therapy session all the time.
Right. And
I'm
the
at
truth
the
is
grocery
that people,
store, dude.
right. People are responsible for how they feel and how they interpret what they feel and what they do with what they feel. You're not responsible for that. You're responsible for yourself, and I'm responsible for myself, et cetera, et cetera. So this is great. Now, going a little bit deeper here, and I'm not sure how willing you are going to be able to talk about this, but we'll try.
Every time you say that, Amanda, I'm like, oh,
you're like,
oh. And then it's something that I'm like, oh, okay.
Remember, though, you always have the right to say, not going there today, you know, of course. It's your life and it's your freedom. Now, on social media, people are generally braver as viewers also. And people have the freedom to leave comments and things like that. So although you have this great following and you have a lot of people who love you, I can imagine that there's people who do not approve and who have negative things to say about you. And I'm wondering if you can share some of that and what that's like for you.
Yeah, a lot. I've always, and I spend way more attention on the people who criticize me than those who don't, because I love to argue, and I'm like, oh my God, my dad's reincarnated in this comment section right here. Let me argue with you. But okay. A lot of the times, like, and I'm aware that the things people are typing in that comment section is the things they already think about themselves. And they're just like, in a lot of instances, projecting that back on others. So I try to consider that, because I know when I was younger, like in middle school, I would make absolutely cruel bullying comments to people that I see in my comment section all the time, because I was bullying myself for those things. So I was like, you should be too. We're all in this together. But
right.
It never really affected me that much, and I would never say that I've been bullied in my life, even though I probably have. I just didn't perceive it as that. Until about 8 months ago, when I had a video go viral out of context and 100 million people were having something to say about me that was super negative and not a reflection of who I actually am. Yeah. So that definitely changed the course of my relationship with the internet, and like, because for a long time I never considered as much like, how are people going to interpret this, I was just like, because I was getting so much positive feedback, I'm just going to be 100% unhinged and post whatever, because it's so validating for others. But now I'm trying to work more on not being like, well, what if somebody clips this? What if, did I say this line weird? Is So I'm kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I'm like, that happening to me made me feel like everything I've ever heard from people who were like bullied in school, and how you have to kind of like build that self-esteem back up, and to be like, no, it's okay, I can be myself, and if people misinterpret what that is, then so be it.
People are like vultures almost. They just grab onto whatever is tasty in that moment, and then they have all kinds of opinions about it. But if you took those people who are, just imagine these people who are being quite upsetting on the internet toward other people, or angry or mean or whatever it is, and they're projecting largely maybe their own stuff onto everybody else. If you took those people and you put them in a room in public, and then you ask them to give their opinion, can you imagine how many of them would not?
Oh,
would just like turn right off, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. People think that the comment bar is for their own internal dialogue. Like their reaction that they say in their head that you usually would keep to your fucking self, they think this is my opportunity to share my thoughts. And I'm like, no, you're speaking directly to me. This is not, your internal dialogue does not belong here.
Yeah. And so I think, so there's a couple things I want to say about this piece. People can be horrible and they're behind their computer screens so that it feels safer. And then out in public, they're a lot quieter because
Mm-hmm.
it's not as safe. And this is the same as what we're talking about, even as you're posting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so on one hand, I hear, you're being unapologetically yourself on your channel or channels, but out in the world, you're not being that. And
Mm-hmm.
then furthermore, you've had
This
this
down.
situation 8 months ago that came down the line. And
Babushka wants to say
I
hello
mean,
to
I
everyone.
can't,
Say hello. She's in here. Shit disturbing.
yeah, cats are like that. It's ridiculous. Um, but since that happened to you 8 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
you've changed your tune a bit. And I heard you say you're being more, what's the word? Like you're paying
Critical.
more attention rather than just being unhinged.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you're doing that to please the world and the followers, if you're putting yourself in a box there, or if that's justified via your own passions.
No, God, not just by via my own passions. It's genuinely just to protect myself from dealing with that again. Like, I don't care about them. I care about me not having to deal with that. And also the fact that when that happened, all of the bullying that I'm receiving, my community's also receiving. Because when people are saying, people are making fun of me because I have, like, issues where I struggle. I need disability accommodating products because I drop everything and
Mm-hmm.
people are making fun of me for being disabled. My whole community is disabled. So then I also felt a lot of guilt that my community is reading these comments and seeing me bullied for being different and neurodivergent, and this is supposed to be a safe space for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a factor too, is like I don't ever want to disadvantage my own community when my goal is quite literally the opposite.
Right? Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Stanford prison experiment?
Mm-hmm.
You have heard of it.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, right? And so it's called the Lucifer Effect. And I'll bring this back to what we're talking about. But ultimately, in a nutshell, the Stanford University put together a prison experiment and they picked students who were set to be, it was all random.
Mm-hmm.
Students were set to be prisoners and other students were set to be the guards. And it spiraled out of control within 6 days because of what I would call people being sheep. Somebody took too harsh of a stance as a guard toward a prisoner. Again, fellow students, this was just an experiment. And then somebody who saw that happening was like, oh, well, if you can do that, then I'm going to do that too. And then eventually the harshness toward the prisoners was just horrible. And they had to shut the
Mm-hmm.
experiment down because the people were being
Abused.
mistreated so
Yeah.
badly. And so when you see a comment online and somebody can go, oh, well, that person was brave, so I'm going to say X, Y, and Z too.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just starts this like snowball effect. And
Mm-hmm.
after, before you know it, like 100 million people are like, oh, Jessica's blank, blank, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I didn't see the video. I don't know the context,
Yeah.
but that's people are like sheep. And so the basis of this conversation and the reason I wanted to bring it up to you today is because we don't want you to be a sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you allow the world to put you in a box, you are being a sheep. But at the same time, it's scary too, because you want to protect your following, you want to protect your community, and you want to protect yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we do need to do that because if we're at risk or if we're in danger or something like that, we do have to, what I'm going to say, quote, play the game
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. But when we're not, I'm going to say, be unhinged
Yeah.
wherever it's safe to be unhinged,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because people in masses are really powerful
Mm-hmm.
and it's really scary,
Yeah.
right? So although as a social media presence, you want to stand out in a way that's going to be safe for you and your community. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand that, right? So finding that balance is really important.
Yeah.
But I think the key here is being able to plug into what you're passionate about as opposed to putting yourself in the box. So we want to
Mm-hmm.
come out of the box and then we want to focus our efforts on that depth and
Mm-hmm.
passion. So can you give me an example of a time where you felt like you were living your life in a place of depth in any way, even if it was just 1 minute? or if it was like a month, or if there was a period in your life where you felt like I'm connected to self and soul?
When I'm swimming, when I'm doing motorsports, and when I'm creating like educational content and making people laugh. Those are the things that, if I'm doing those things, I feel good.
Okay. Do you tend to create content that leads you that way? Or are you just kind of creating whatever and then hoping things stick for you?
Yeah, it hasn't been very deliberate and intentional. And a lot of that is like the perfectionism that I'm trying to get over, and feeling like I'm, the imposter syndrome of it, because usually it's, I say some shit that I'm just ranting off the top of my head, and then people tell me they found that informative, and I'm like, oh. So I would like to be more deliberate and intentional, and being like, okay, I'm going to sit down and do a video today about XYZ, rather than just rifling off whatever's at the tip top of my head that millisecond.
Right. But at the same time, that rifling off that's happening, it is working for you.
Yeah.
That's been huge for creating your following. But this conversation, contrary to what people might be hearing, is not really about the following. It's not really about the social media presence. This conversation is about, how do we tap in, or how does Jessica tap into living a more purposeful life?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because social media aside, if you were to leave your house more, and I'm not actually asking, I'm just kind of for you to think about. If you were to leave your house more, what would you be doing different if you were living a meaningful life? Where would you go? What kinds of groceries would you buy? What
Mm-hmm.
kinds of friends would you spend time with?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do more of? What would you do less of? These are things that are really important, because they will inform then everything that you do in your social media thing, which isn't the point of the conversation.
Yeah.
The idea is, what's meaningful to you that you can tap into and stay connected to. Because right now, my thought, what I'm seeing, is that you're like floating around. You're like all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And in that floating around, maybe it's like, oh, I really like this thing. Okay, well, that's good. But then it's fleeting and then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how do we become more grounded in that depth? And I'm curious what you think about that.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't even know. And part
All
of
right.
it too, I think about it, I've like in only just recently learning that I'm physically disabled, and so much of the reason I don't
Mm-hmm.
leave the house is because of my body pain. And now people telling me that I should be using mobility aids, that if I'm not leaving the house, like for example, if you ask me if I want to do anything right now, the answer is going to be no. If you ask me if I wanted to do it and you'll push me in a wheelchair, I don't have a reason not to. Because the reason I was going to say no is because I was going to be too exhausted and there wasn't going to be somewhere to sit and da 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 da. So part of, I think, me living a more fulfilling life, and this is going to make me emotional, is also accepting that I need mobility aids, and that people are going to look at me when I have mobility aids, and when and they see I am able to walk, they're going to like think things. And more so my own internalized ableism, trying to get over that part of it, like doubting myself. But I think, yeah, me living a purposeful, what is going to get me going outside and doing all these things, it would be using things like walkers or braces or a wheelchair, so that I can get rid of the excuse that I have not to. Because when I do those things, when I have accommodations in place, I really enjoy myself. Whereas if I go to if I'm hanging out with a bunch of people and there's couches, I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to stay as long as until they tell me not to leave, because I'm like,
Fair enough.
I'm not getting tired. My back doesn't hurt, stuff like that. So I think that's part of it, but I have a hard time with that too, because I've always had an invisible disability, and I've hated that other people can't see what's wrong with me. But then the thought of them being able to see it, I'm like, whoa, because I'm still fighting myself with this idea that like, I think I can do it, even though it's super painful and I have a lot of consequences. Like right now, I could do a cartwheel. I can do a cartwheel, but I now have to tell myself, no, you can't, because your shoulder's going to hurt for 3 days. So yeah, I think when I think about living a purposeful life, and whenever I've done those things, the reason I don't do it again is because I'm having to recover from it. But if I put accommodations in place, I wouldn't have to be doing that. But it's kind of just the mental hurdle of like what other people are going to think. Which I don't want to care about, because that's never really been something I care about. But at the same time, and I think a lot of it has to do with like my hypersexualization too, because I always want to be perceived as like sexy. Like the male gaze has oriented my life. And I'm like, a back brace, a neck brace, a walker, a wheelchair, like, so working on that, I think, is a huge component to me actually being able to like go out and hang out with people and do shit.
I want to bring you back to, I don't know, session number 2, maybe it's 1, where I asked you, we can go back and maybe I'll go back and look at the clip at some point, but I asked you, do you think that you do things to create attention for yourself? Do you remember I asked you that question?
I don't remember what I did yesterday. Are you talking about in regards to the in regards to the car?
No, this was before the car.
Okay.
This was about how you are really quiet in your life, but on social media you're really big. Right? And so I asked you, do you create that to get attention, to feel like you are valuable? Now, can you answer that question right now? Because the answer you gave me is contrary to what you're saying right now.
Well, if I'm considering when it comes to the male gaze, but also no, like that's so conflicting, because I don't want it, but also clearly I do, because I don't want to be the opposite of it.
Yeah. And this is growth here, because your answer was unequivocally, no, I don't do that for attention. I don't give a shit what people think. And something has changed here, possibly through our conversations or through your life since we started, that the answer is actually yes. That you do these things that you do for attention so you can feel better about yourself. I
think that my instinct to say no to that is because I've heard people say that to me so long in different contexts, like in regards to my health, like always hearing like, you're doing this for attention, this for attention. So my instinct, are you doing this for attention? I'm like,
you're like, thank you. I'm definitely not. You got it. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense, because that's tied into your medical trauma, right? And this is more an exploration into like, why are you doing this? Because I saw it. And then the answer was no at the time. So I said, okay, like, no problem. Now we're seeing it again. So I hope you forgive me for bringing it up.
No,
but
you don't need to be forgiven.
But this is really important piece to your healing, is to say, yeah, okay, like, this is the medical stuff aside. It is actually very important for you to be attractive and be liked by the men who watch you. Right? However you want to word that.
That's always been the only value that I've ever thought I had. Like,
right.
No matter anything even I've had fucking doctors say to me before, like, that, you know what I mean? You have shiny hair, you're fit, you have like glowing skin, like, you're beautiful, enjoy it, when I'm complaining about how much my body hurts. So that's the only good thing my body has ever brought me, is like, that's what people like about me. That was the only value I ever saw in myself. I also grew up in an environment of like hypersexualizing women and the male gaze and stuff like that. So that was always obviously the easiest way for me to find value, but I was always getting attention for the way that I looked. So
yeah,
the thought of, and not even in the way that I wanted, but I do remember when I was 20 and I bought a bikini that covered my chest, and when I walked down the beach, no one looked at me, and I was like, I don't want to wear this bikini anymore. But also, when men are coming up to me and sexually harassing me, I'm pissed off about it. Because obviously I should be able to exist in my body without those things happening. But clearly, when people aren't turning their head, I'm like...
There's a yearning for that.
Yeah.
Like I want to, if
definitely
people turn their head and pay attention to me, then I'm valuable. Is that
and that's all I got.
Accurate?
At the end, like that's how it's always felt. And that was really hard for me when I gained weight and lost a bunch of weight, and my boobs totally changed, because my boobs were my whole identity. Like that's, people would refer to me by my boobs. Like, so that changing like fucked up my whole identity, because that's my whole identity has been my body, the way my body looks. So yeah, that's been tricky.
So take this then, and let's ask the question about the theme of today's session, which is there depth in that for you?
No,
look at the disgust on your face, right? You're like, no, this actually isn't. I want to feel valuable, but I don't want to have to sell my soul and sell my body to feel that. Right? Because I know you as a woman, as a human being, are far more valuable than that. And you have created, largely because of your trauma, this isn't even your fault, you've created yourself as like this figure, this sexual figure.
And
saying like,
and I've been like that since I was a very small child.
And because you've had so much trauma around that. And that's where, if you're willing, we'll go there at some point. But so you have this like sexual presence, and that's why you're part of the reason why you're so popular with whoever you're popular with. But so coming back to this idea of depth means that we naturally want to embrace our isness of humanness, just being human. And if a human is aesthetically beautiful in that, then fine. And if they're not, fine, right? We want to actually be able to still shine in our beauty as at a soul level, because the body is the vessel, and the body will shine if the soul is shining, but not do it because that's what we need to feel valuable. Because the truth is since you were a little kid, you've been doing this, and it's not actually working, because you still feel like you're not valuable, and even though you have this great following.
And it's associated with
a
lot of shame too, because I don't want to find my value in that, because I don't actually like it.
Right. Yeah. So how does this, and I have an idea of the answer, but how does this play into the relationships that you carry? And what I understand about those relationships is that they're frivolous, they're short-lived, they're fiery, and then they burn out quick. Is that true?
Yeah, it's just an episode of sex addiction.
And so this idea of like portraying yourself as this sex symbol and then having these fast and furious relationships leads you back to the same place every time. Shame and disgust at self. Right? Yeah. So in your relationships, there's also no depth.
Yeah, no, it's just dopamine. It's just right here, right now. Yeah.
And that's how dangerous addiction is.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't realize it while we're just playing around and having fun. but it just like builds and builds and builds. And addiction is this instant relief, and it's like, oh, this is great, this is so fun. But the reality is you're just actually killing yourself inside
Mm-hmm.
when you're addicted to something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, okay. So what we want to do, what I want to do is I want to figure out what ways we can start to take baby steps towards depth. Now, I've heard what you said about, going out in public and like having people see you with a walker or a wheelchair or some aid of some kind, right? And the truth is that those people aren't going to know what's going on. They're not actually going to see you for your disability. They're going to have no idea. People are going to have their judgments and all of that stuff, but we can work on the whole caring less about what people think. We want to take that energy and that confidence that you portray on social media, and we want to translate that to real life. And
Mm-hmm.
even here, now this is part of the social media piece and what we're doing here, but this is a really vulnerable, honest you as far as I'm seeing,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah. There's this beautiful, soulful presence that you bring to these conversations, and you're just able to be, right? But you're able to be unapologetically yourself with me, even though it's really difficult for you, even though there's some things that maybe you wouldn't say if I wasn't here, maybe you wouldn't admit to. And there's tears there, and there's beauty in that, and there's healing in that, right? And so we're bridging the gap between your social media sex symbol presence, if I can be so bold to say that, and come bringing over here to your real life and having that same kind of confidence. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just curious if you have anything you want to add to that.
I guess it's just confusing because I definitely, in a lot of circumstances, am 100% unapologetically myself in public, and people like look at me and are like, what the fuck? And I don't care. But then there's certain things that I think about that I'm like, oh yeah, no, that I wouldn't do that. So I guess it's just confusing
Mm-hmm.
for me when I'm doing it, when I'm not. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, if I'm in my house, I'm fine. And I would like to be able to be fine not in my house.
So let's practice that. Let's practice not being fine outside of your house, right? We want to, there's so many avenues to practice here, but we're going to start small and you do whatever you feel comfortable with. The idea is that you're still doing, like we talked about the car. You still bought the car. You still had to do the thing
Mm-hmm.
in order to find the growth, right? And even though you're finding something's wrong with the car or something's wrong with maybe your thought process around buying the car, not getting the inspection, whatever, but you still did the thing and there's still learning in that. So let's talk about just a few examples of things that you might be open to trying in the next week or the coming weeks. And my overall idea, where we want to start kind of basically, would be the kind of foods that you eat,
Mm-hmm.
the relationships that you have, the type of outings that you have with friends. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, instead of going into someone's house where maybe you feel safe in there, like you feel safe in your own house,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to do something outside. But that maybe means that you need to purchase a mobility aid of some kind.
I
It could
have
even be
one.
like a fold up. Okay, great,
I
great.
haven't built it yet. It's in the box.
Okay, fantastic. So the practice would be to take that and face whatever feelings come out. I'm going to give you an example. This is kind of a crazy example, kind of out there, but something that helped me change my perspective. When I was in my first year of university, I decided I had long hair like I do now, and I decided to shave my head for cancer because I'm kind of out there. I'm like
Love
all
that.
over the
I've always
place. I'm
wanted to do that.
similar to you in that way. Okay, so I go in and like there's a stage and whatever, and I'm like getting whatever it's called, donations or whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna be brave and it's gonna be celebrated and all of that. And so part of it was oh, like me because I'm out there and I'm cool and I'm going to do
Mm,
crazy things. And then it happened. And then I started crying on stage because I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
what did I do to myself? And because my hair was always like something that helped me feel better about myself. If I had long hair, then I was like shielded
Yes. Yeah.
from bullying or, I was more attractive to people or whatever it was. So I started crying because I had taken my safety shield
Yes.
completely off. And then it was celebrated in the moment, like there was cheering and clapping. But guess what? The next day, as I was walking down the hall, people were staring. And I was like mortified. I
Mm,
was like totally like, oh my God. So what I did was, I got a hat. This is my little process. Got a hat, started wearing a hat, and then a professor called me out on wearing the hat in class and was like, "What are you doing?" You're like, call me out in front of the whole class. I don't know, it was like 300 people in there. And was like, "Why are you wearing a hat when you were so proudly displaying your willingness to donate your hair to cancer?" And so I was mortified.
yeah,
And
like
he's calling
fucking
me out
duh.
in
Isn't
front
it
of all these
obvious?
people. But that was really helpful. I took the hat off, and what I proceeded to do for the next, how long does it take to fucking grow your hair out? A long
Long
time.
time.
What I practiced was looking at people as they judged me.
Mm.
So I'm walking down the hall, and these two people are walking, and they're like whispering to each other, and they're staring, and I just watched them walk by.
Mm.
Like I just
Yo,
like, and I can laugh. I laugh now, Jess, but the reality was it was very painful. It was very difficult to
yes.
do this practice. But what I found is after a while, it didn't matter anymore that
Mm-hmm.
people were looking at me and like judging whatever. It didn't matter. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
hit me. It didn't hurt me anymore. And I was like, wow, like that's really incredible. I can just be however I am, and people are going to be curious.
Yeah.
And in their
Yeah.
curiosity, that can lead to a comment that can be painful. But again, that's my interpretation of that person's comment that's actually about themselves. How
Mm-hmm.
many of those people would have shaved their head and walked around for 3 months with with a terrible hairstyle that you couldn't style because it was so short,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is the practice. I can assure you from my own personal experience that if you take that mobility aid out and you stop hiding in public, in plain sight, and you start to watch people watch you not for your sex symbolism,
Mm.
but for you as a human being who suffers. And what you'll find is that their curiosity
Mm-hmm.
is really all that is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the practice is putting yourself out there little by little. But again, I also mentioned like the foods that you're eating. So are you buying shit food for yourself? Are you actually making healthy food for yourself? Are you doing that? The next relationship, and I you don't have to talk about this. I'm not going to get into it today, but whatever relationship you're either in now or developing into or whatever that looks like, asking yourself, is this a wildfire that I'm getting into that's going to burn me to the ground again? Or can I go slower with this? Can I be more methodical about this? These are the types of things I'd like you to practice to find that depth because you're constantly living in a surface place
Mm.
right now and it's not helping you to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts?
There's been 3 times at the airport now that I like swelled my pride and used disability services. And so I
Okay.
was in a wheelchair. But the whole time I was hat on, hoodie up,
Yeah,
looking at the
like
floor
fighting.
because people are looking, obviously, like you said, curiosity. So yeah, it's interesting what you say because in so many contexts I can absolutely do that. Make eye contact with someone who's looking at me because now they're embarrassed for the fact that I'm now realizing you're looking at me. So how about you feel the embarrassment of someone looking at you rather than me? But yeah, that I guess I'm just still so sensitive about the because I still like whatever judgments other people are making, I still make those about myself. So when other people say them, it's kind of like, it makes it harder that I'm not like, I know, okay, I agree. So the idea of like looking at someone while using a mobility aid freaks me the fuck out. But obviously that's where growth is. So.
So I'm not asking you to do it. I'm not telling you to do it. There's no homework here. It's entirely up to whatever you want to do. But the key is for you to find those moments is to ask yourself, is this healthy for me? And then if it's not, then choosing something that is healthy for you. Because is staying in your house all day healthy for you? No. So we're going to choose to go out of the house and do something different. Even if it's just even if like you go to a park and like, I don't know, go to a park and you lay in the grass for half an hour. People are going to be curious about that. They'll be like, what the fuck is that girl doing? You know, like people just cannot mind their own business, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Just doing things to get you out of that comfort zone. Not enough that's going to debilitate you for days to come. Okay. We're talking just little bite-sized pieces. And so the goal for the next session then is for you to come back and say, okay, this is what I did that put me out of my comfort zone, and this was the result.
Okay.
Are you down?
Yeah.
You're like, maybe, I don't know.
We'll do it. Okay, sure. But no, it's exciting. I want that.
Yeah. Good. And the reality is that healing is like all encompassing. So if you start to tap into depth and meaning in your life, and you start doing actionable behaviors that lead you to promoting that depth and meaning, then your healing will come full circle. We don't have to do ABC type of interventions on self-esteem, or should I say CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy. We don't need to do those things. And I say, okay, this is going to build your confidence. Bam, do this. Here's your homework. That's a very standard way of doing therapy. What I'm saying is,
which hasn't worked for me ever.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we're taking the whole view of your life and saying, okay, well, like, what's the main goal? Your main goal is to live purposefully in a way that means something to you, so you can feel happier and more secure and more taken care of in your life. You taking care of yourself. You not taking any health professionals, pardon me, but health professionals bullshit when they tell you that you're faking it or that you're trying to get attention or whatever it is. And I laugh a little because I just pointed out that you are trying to get attention, but it's for a different reason. This isn't about the medical piece. This is about your sexual presence. And that's tied into your childhood and your adolescence and stuff. That's a different thing. We're not talking about the medical thing. I respect everything you said about your medical struggle and your disabilities, like, for sure. And everybody should be doing that, but that's not for me. That's not for me to judge. So that's the goal. Now I'm just mindful of time here. So ideally, you'll come back next week and you'll have some stories for me of things that you've done. And even if you're not quite ready socially to get yourself out there, especially with a mobility aid, maybe when you go to the grocery store, you're going to choose to buy healthier foods because that's going to add to the depth of meaning and support for self. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And I have been sensory seeking in food a lot. I've been seeking out foods that are just like the most flavorful so that I can like kind of stimulate myself. And there's better ways to be doing that, because that also makes me feel like, fuck, like.
Yeah. So it's interesting because on one hand, we're working on Jessica finding her connection to her soul, to yourself, soul and self, but we're also managing addiction.
Yeah.
Over here, right? Because you're addiction switching. You're like, oh, stimulation. This is why you have these fast and furious relationships. So slowly, and your internal addict's not going to like this, but slowly we're going to step back from the seeking or that stimulation seeking Because when you're in that place, you can't actually focus on anything else in a healthy way.
Yeah.
You're just like dopamine, right? And the more that we step back from that, the body can actually recalibrate itself. And when I say body, I mean brain. You can have a recalibration process where the brain goes, okay, I can't actually produce more dopamine right now, but it's okay. Like, Jessica's stable. It's okay. We don't need to produce the dopamine right now. And then as soon as I'm able to produce some, I can naturally do that rather than being forced to do that.
Yeah, I have been practicing that because I've been quitting smoking.
Oh, so that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. That's fantastic. Good for you. Good for you. Okay. But remember, it's cyclical. So, you're going to have some days, some weeks that are going to be really great, some months even, and then it's going to turn over and it's not going to be great. And then, but next time it's great, it's going to be a little bit better than it was the time before that it was great. So that's what we want to be focusing on, is it's not all or nothing. We're just bite-sized little pieces, and then we just allow the ebbs and flows of the greatness and the not so great times, and then coming back full circle. So I just encourage you to remember that for when you're feeling discouraged. Okay. So that's time for us today. Can you give me a checkout of what you're taking away from today and how was it?
Good. It's nice to talk with a professional about the hypersexualization and stuff, because that's never been something that I've ever wanted to talk about before. And because it's really been on my mind when it comes to mobility aids. Like, that's made me really realize what's going on. And I am excited because I know once I have the self-esteem to use mobility aids, I'm going to be able to do whatever the fuck I want. So it's really going to suck. Yeah, but I'm excited to do it so I can fucking get over it.
Yeah. And so it's just little by little. I would encourage you not to stress yourself out about it. And if it's too much, the intensity or the pressure is too much, take a step back, because the last thing we want is the work that we're doing together to cause any harm to you. We just want to be out of your comfort zone, but not in a way that's going to hurt you for days to come. Yeah. Right? And
that was an interesting point that I made note of that mentally when you say that too, is I'm going out of my comfort zone, but only what would make me uncomfortable in the moment, not the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day.
That's right. So take this for what it is. See if you can bring me some stories of things that you've gone and done out of your comfort zone, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
For next week.
Sounds good.
Do you want to do same time next week?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Jess. Well, great to see you, and text me if you need in between.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it so much. Have a good week.
Okay, you're welcome. You too.